currently urgent, integrated economics, consequences and solution ideas, consequences without changing. As we laid out in our previous video, without big changes, most Western countries, especially the EU, will feel dramatic economic decline and fall dramatically backwards in the realm of high tech, and thus also regarding living standards and consumer buying patterns. This will lead to even more mental health issues, crime, destitution, theft, and possibly even riots or uprising due to the cost of living crisis, recession, and inequalities that are in many countries bigger than in France just before the French Revolution. Healthcare as a whole, or at least many treatments, will become unaffordable, thus probably shortening life expectancies, possibly even leading to triage situations where people cannot be treated. They're left to their own fate, or they receive morphine overdoses and left to die, as during the pandemic. That means we could run into a situation where the elderly get killed, many are unemployed, and youth won't have a real chance anymore due to high debt, interest payments, and depleted resources. All of this without even factoring in any war or arms race. Common solution ideas by scientists. Western countries, especially Germany, according to the experts, should turn from a big government to private economy, one which is not driven by the state, but by powerful private entrepreneurs investing in high tech. Basically, government ratios in the overall economy should be reduced. Ideologically, their narrative is trying to protect everyone against everything, but they're constantly failing badly due to bureaucracy, inefficiencies, hacking, agendas, and corruption. In the end, they are mostly just further enriching the super rich. It would help to discuss problems openly, completely, and honestly among entrepreneurs and true practical experts without bans on thinking or censorship to permit us to actively seek solutions and create optimal strategies. Lower taxes on investments and reduce bureaucracy. Create high-tech friendly politics like France or Silicon Valley or Singapore. Especially focus on creating innovation hotbeds like Silicon Valley. This, with ample financing and other things, could create a better mood and dynamic of not emigrating, but solving problems innovatively, locally, and resisting the EU bureaucracy and patronization. He who pays creates. Thus, Germany is a biggest net player. They could do so much more in general and much more positively to influence EU economics and innovation politics. Germany must no longer have a worse business system than countries like France or be considered as such. It cannot be that Germany fails at reducing governmental spending requests by 3.5%. Yet each company must achieve a 3.5% of true annual cost cuts to survive. That's ridiculous. There is enough capital in and for Germany available. It's just a volatile environment. So the capital finds much better conditions elsewhere. And that's the key point that the government needs to start fixing. The new innovation hotbeds should focus on top of the line SOTA, state of the art soda investments, not for second best or mediocre low cost tech. Germany would need corresponding conditions and then a good equity story for that. Germany's perspective is the EU is also too strict regarding antitrust laws, e.g., defining minimal markets, on which they then see a company with just a few million euros annual revenue as dominating and cause gigantic bureaucratic hassles. Tesla has transformed the car industry by building a car around software innovations, while others have treated software stepmotherly with bad, uncompetitive working conditions, and they failed. There are three major trends in software related employment: nearshoring, farshoring, and farshoring is having to hire two people essentially to get one to work. Now there's even remote shoring, people working from home around the world, but wanting to be paid like in the highest paying countries. All of these methods are failing. The number of right populists is not so much a problem, but rather the low credibility of politicians after many evil agendas, lying, fraud, and collapsed narratives. The supply chain laws are nearly impossible to adhere to, as there are so many suppliers and in so many categories. Supply is already dominated by the Chinese companies. The law might be designed to push companies into buying more from EU companies, but it comes too late, as there is not competitive EU supply in many categories. And with non EU companies, the laws are nearly impossible to adhere to. Energy costs must come down, which means non ideological energy politics, which doesn't outlaw things like getting gas from Russia, which Austria has been doing all along, fracking, or nuclear energy. We must create more energy supply to bring down prices and not turn rare electricity into expensive hydrogen, but instead turn natural gas into hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and store the CO2. Women should have more incentives to work. People shouldn't be incentivized to stop working at lower ages, but to work longer by taxing less. There is probably no alternative to adapt rent payments to life expectancy, if that might continue to become lower due to the COVID vaccinations. There should be fewer school and college dropouts. Maybe support teams for highly qualified immigrants. Maybe even one stop administrative shops for them while avoiding immigration into the social systems. As otherwise, social systems and financial support of demographic elements will break down. They already are breaking down. More flexibility is needed, especially regarding working times. There should be more excellence initiatives, especially around universities, tech clusters, venture labs, and one stop shops for all important target groups. Not just for immigrants, but for investors, startup entrepreneurs, etc. In seed, private, or VC financing, many regions are not doing too badly, but financing lacks for successive stages, which means that companies often fail or get sold to American or other investors who are willing to take more risks or need to have better taxation schemes to remain competitive. Well, there is even double taxation in many cases in Germany. Also, a research atlas of who works on which topics is missing, as well as where companies can beneficially build dependencies. So far, research in the EU is far less practical and competitive than in the USA. That should change to lead to job creation and practical improvements for society. People should be creating and implementing concepts, how regions can strategically use AI or other high-tech related strategic initiatives to improve overall competitiveness, skill levels, and prosperity. There exist multiple such innovative, patentable, unique opportunities with latest AI and other high tech, similar to Taiwan's semiconductor strategy and the niches it targeted a few decades ago. However, the race is on who implements such strategies, and only 1 to 3 such regions will prevail globally for each new high-tech direction. Without coordination, but instead just letting some youngsters, of which many are grifters who fight for funding, will not be sufficient. Instead, systematically innovating in hotbeds like Silicon Valley need to be created that get enough funding, strategically follow promising areas, and implement all the latest efficiency and high-tech insights, e.g., OpenAI, Qualia Q, like AI systems and their applications and refinements and other AI ideas along various domains and use cases are very promising. As we see in Ukraine, the way countries fight wars has dramatically changed and continues to change. One could even use that as an innovation area. Questionable, but definitely better than putting money into outdated tech like Germany that created a telegram service for 20 billion euros. Military innovation is around fast integrated drone warfare combined with other systems, AI-driven reconnaissance, attack, defense, evasion, radar frequency jamming and evasion, remote hacking, and evasion hardening against that. Also important are supersonic missiles, gliding bombs, and next generation air defense systems, fast cart-like attack vehicles, etc. Except for the top 3 or 4 countries, no other ones are strong in these regards. Thus, they are both vulnerable and uncompetitive in terms of military and economic factors, as their old weapons can easily be destroyed with the new ones, leaving these countries vulnerable to attacks, and only some corrupt sources might order the outdated systems. It is of top importance to reduce regulation by EU, Germany, etc., as France has shown that this has led to an industry half the size of Germany. If the state interferes, then only through pricing policies, lowering, raising prices, and innovation financing where it would otherwise not happen. Without such innovations leading to big profits and wages, the welfare state might have to be reduced to no longer compete with companies, paying much lower welfare rates, but adding payments to low wages of working people so much that they can actually survive. As a result of failures to do so, only 17% of Ukrainians who came to Germany work roughly 2 years later, while around 70% work in the Netherlands. German citizens' income, i.e., welfare, per recipient has increased 37% roughly from the years 2020 to 2024. That would be a high increase in normal times. And also relative to the gamed unofficial, um, the gamed official inflation statistics. We all know that the real inflation is even higher, so that these people are not better off. But German companies can't earn that much more in international trade due to low competitiveness and innovation, so that companies face more pressures from the job market as they have to pay high wages to attract and motivate people to work. Due to disastrous German demographics of baby boomers retiring and wanting old age pensions and health care from children that don't exist, big conflicts might break out. Perhaps a point-based immigration system similar to Canada might help, i.e., selecting those immigrants that can help Germany most and not those selected by the human trafficking mafia. Also, people in Germany should have more children, and the state should be more supportive in that regard to the conditions. More kindergarten places, high compatibility of family and career, higher rent payouts for people with children to incentivize having children. Fundamental German and EU problems and corresponding solutions are insufficient separation of powers. Especially, politicians should be isolated from all abuse of power and corruption, potential, or directly be replaced by objective experts or AIs. Minimize taxes and types of duties. Improve education, not just turning people into uncritical or uninnovative sheep labor, but using latest learning techniques like brain-centric design and flow learning to impart comprehensive knowledge without gaps. We especially need to eliminate knowledge gaps regarding economic principles, correlations, and relationships. There should be minimal subsidies, except truly practical research, to minimize corruption and market distortions. National debt should be kept low and be used only as a last resort in crises to not advance in the overall debt cycle, as described by Ray Dalio in his Principles book. High debts and high interests choke economies and inevitably lead to economic collapse. Energy supply should be relatively cheap and dependable to keep an industry competitive. That's not shocking. The subsidiary principles must be upheld, i.e., that all decisions that can be made locally are actually made there, where people know best what's going on. That can also be part of the next principles, reducing bureaucracy and increasing planning security. By establishing long-term principles and sticking to them, instead of introducing many new agendas and corresponding laws, regulations, bureaucracy. No fight against the economic backbone. Small and often very innovative companies. Don't introduce big challenges for them, e.g., having to comply with and adhere to supply chain law with negative impacts on the economy and those families. Small and medium-sized businesses suffer over proportionally from bureaucracy, high costs, and taxes, while big corporations benefit due to internationalization, automation, and evasion. In Germany, 20%, which means roughly 15 million people, finance the other 80%, and the numbers have been developing unfavorably. Many refugees, foreigners, and increasingly Germans who maybe had a low income job or have had one once, but they earn so little that they don't get more, they don't get enough. So, of those 20% who are net payers, around half will retire over the next 10 years. And from the other half, hundreds of thousands per year emigrate, along with around 16% of the companies. And Germany is by far the biggest net payer in Europe regarding EU, refugees, the Ukraine war, costly agendas like the green transition, which is a farce, defaulting corrupt companies, corrupt subsidies, and many other things, while mostly not innovating, but exploding bureaucracy and corruption. Without reversing these trends, Germany and several other EU countries are going down to the level of developing countries, which, by the way, aren't really developing. Discussions should be around facts and strategies instead of opinions or ideologies. An interesting such strategy would be if the EU adopted a similar but ideally more attractive, efficient, and competitive strategy to the US Inflation Reduction Act with a slightly different focus. Maybe focus a bit more on specialty hotbeds, specialty AIs, instead of mostly infrastructure and production capabilities. Governments could create these innovation hotbeds as innovation clusters, different fields of AI, and its applications, and source the best ideas from innovation and startup contests for that in a truly meritocratic way. What to do personally, especially regarding your investments, if not much positive change can be achieved. This is not investment advice. Always do your research. Avoid the highly corrupt, bureaucratic, innovation averse EU, except for some great opportunities, most just available under corrupt circumstances. SAP is still good, but software can be created in 1 to 2 years at 1% of the costs from before. That will create a new level of competition around most types of software as attackers can quickly and efficiently come up with new solutions that incorporate all the best ideas with little cost in short time spans. NVIDIA is only good regarding graphics cards and deep learning, which has run into several hitherto unsolvable fundamental problems like hallucinations, data rights, data labeling, and training costs. When other fields of AI gain more importance, it will drop again. Similarly, EVs are only partially useful technology and only for people who live next to a green power plant. Thus, also companies like Tesla or BYD bid might go down. Generally, just invest in top innovators or companies with pricing power in these inflation times. And the fabulous seven when it makes sense chart wise and fundamentally from other valuations. If you're audacious and a bit naughty, try to benefit from the agendas like the wars, the pandemics, social media harm, need for more medicines. It saddens me to say that, though. What do? We created a concept of how different regions can strategically use AI related initiatives to improve their overall competitiveness, skill levels, and prosperity. There exist multiple such innovative, patentable opportunities, similar to Taiwan's semiconductor strategy mentioned before, and the niches that it targeted a few decades ago. Such initiatives can then create lasting innovations like these hotbeds I keep talking about, like Taiwan or Silicon Valley. Even if a single company fails, the competitiveness stays, the brain power stays in the area, and they will be used by related companies in the field. Our extended research and solutions from potentialism. We, as potentialism, see these additional systemic problems in the EU, especially Germany. Many agendas, especially using narratives of having to help pretty much everybody in the whole world, mostly as an excuse in the end to primarily funnel money to the super rich. Exploding bureaucracy to hide corruption is another key mechanism that leads to big frustrations. A key problem and impediment are the now minimal perspectives of youngsters achieving similar buying powers as their parents due to high debt, unfavorable demographics, little innovation, and many scarcities regarding minerals, resources, accommodations, university education, healthcare, etc. The key things we would change are creating optimized, open public strategies supported by AI to, for the first time, really solve the key problems of today actively while leaving no room for corruption and fighting it actively. We would optimize all incentives towards peak AI, long-term outcomes for society. Decision makers would be held accountable. It is high time for us all to become active. Good ideas don't spread themselves, especially when there are so many false and partial narratives and beliefs. Thus, please help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing our content and joining our communities. See the links in the description or profile. We are probably the first ones to have a comprehensive analysis and solution for the Earth's 30 plus top problems. Find out more. Join us under potentialism.net, PotentialismPCF on Substack, and other links provided in the description. Thanks for watching.